data-driven offers, which is very general, a generic term, but also trying to kind of crack the nut on how do you make money out of data? Because frankly, today you look at what's happening in the world, especially in B2B and in industrial markets, it is difficult to find real success stories. And by success stories, I mean scalable offers that have scaled, that have sold and went viral, and with a profit. And we'll get into that. You know, there is something is disconnected, and I'm going to touch on some of the points. And obviously, there's going to be good discussions, but it's just the beginning of the journey for me, a research journey that started about 2 years ago, and with Professor Ulaga out of INSEAD. We co-wrote this book very quickly, and then we'll obviously do maybe a second edition, a third edition. As you know, digital is moving very fast. Things change. You know, one day a company is very successful, and the next day is being sold because it's not working. Not to mention any names. I will mention names today because at the end of the day, it's all public information. What I'm going to say today is not representative of the Thales Group. Thales is doing a phenomenal job in our digital transformation. We're learning from, like all the rest of companies, industrial companies, we're learning as we go. So this is a message about my research in general. So I'm going to cover 2 sections today. I'm going to go into the status of digital transformations, and then the second section will be around why we need to pay attention to value. They say data is your new gold, right? Data is your new oil, but data is worth nothing if you don't have a purpose for it, and if you don't manage your data to create value for someone, whether it's through selling your data, through monetizing in services, etc. So we're going to talk about value creation model, value quantification model, and then at the end, we're going to touch very quickly on digital pricing. Because frankly, there is only a couple companies that are discussing today in B2B and industrial markets, how do you price your MVPs? How do you price your digital offers, right? And how do you move from legacy pricing models where I have a box, I have a product, I have a machine, and I sell it through a CapEx model, right? And now I'm moving now to a subscription model where I'm asking my industrial customers to, you don't need to, invest. You're going to pay a subscription every month. And people think, well, it's easy, but it's not easy. It was easier in B2C, and it took a long time for these companies to be successful. And where a lot of companies in the industrial world thinks it's going to be easy in very traditional B2B market. So we'll touch a little bit on that, but there's a whole section on the book on that. And frankly, I'm lucky I obtained a PhD in management because I went through all the management theories and literature, and we'll see that digital is just another innovation. In the last 200 years in the business world, we had massive disruptive innovation, and we went through these transformations many times before. And digital is just one more of this disruption that is changing the business world. This one is a bit different, and I'll tell you why. Why it's different and why you cannot do business as usual, and you cannot apply your traditional innovation models in the digital transformation models. Totally different. So let's get started. Now, yes, I do call myself an agent of disruption, AKA a buzz killer, right? There is a fad right now. Every company is jumping on the digital transformation. Everybody knows that. It's become a very trendy world, and obviously the way we define it, it matters. Digitalization is not the same as digital transformation. Software is not digital transformation. So, I mean, all these things, right now everybody's packaging that in digital transformation, but I think we need to look at what it means really. So I'm gonna give really a state of the union on what's happening in the world, and it's not me just saying it. I was lucky to for the book to research about 250 to 300 consulting papers and academic papers on transformations, and so I went from Accenture to McKinsey, all these papers that are promising the world to everybody, and now you could see since a little bit of the collapse of GE, there's been a change of tone in what is being published about digital. We're seeing less of these very enthusiastic, very promising reports to more of a something is not working, and I'll show you a few examples. So these are the numbers we see in the trillions. right? You've seen all these numbers. It goes from 6 trillion to 30 trillion. I went in the middle. I put 15 trillion. This is the value, the promised value we're announcing to the world. Great numbers, it stimulates the CEOs and, all these consulting companies trying to sell services. It's a big number. Another one, 50 billion connected objects by 2020. Well, 2020 is in 10 months. We're not there yet. And frankly, I don't think we'll get it. And it depends on how you count these numbers. If you put all the mobile phones in the world, yeah, you're going to get to billions and billions and billions. But frankly, it's a matter of how you count this. So this is a summary of really a primary practice. If you look at this as a research project, on the left side, we have lots of buzz, lots of promises, lots of very high valuation on the stock market based on what's happening in digital, lots of high multiple in acquisitions right now in software companies and businesses that deliver zero profit, right? And being acquired for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's a promised land. The problem is, it's been like this for now 7-10 years. It's a promised land. It's been the promised land for 7-10 years. At some point, we need to deliver profit. We need to translate these promises into sales and EBIT, profit. So the reality is, when you read about digital and you read about consulting report, a lot of it is anecdotes. A lot of it is little stories. So, anecdotes is not data. Anecdotes are anecdotes. So you go behind the curtain on most of this transformation and you see what's on the right side. We're mixing things. Okay, I'm going to put a CRM in my software, in my business. This is not digital transformation. This is becoming digital in managing your customers, right? We're changing the ERPs. We're doing customer journey mapping. We're doing all these things. No, that's not digital. So it depends on how you define digital, in essence. We have, right now, some of these companies have been transforming digitally for 10 years, right? You go to conferences and you listen to the stories of Caterpillar and Schindler and some of these ABB and some of these big industrial groups. They've gone at it for 5, 7, 10 years. And yet, when you ask a question, how much sales are you generating out of pure digital? Now, not software, pure digital. It's not clear. Now, if you look at Siemens, for example, Siemens has a digital factory. They call that a digital factory with about 15 billion euros in sales. It's big, right? It's big, 20% profit margin. Nice, right? But you look at what they did, they acquired big software companies, right? So the Siemens digital factory is a combination of all the Mendix and all these software they keep acquiring, and they're acquiring a lot, like every other company is doing. Most of the industrial natives are acquiring big software companies because they're building their engine, their software engine, to be able to do their digital transformation. But they count that as digital. At the end of the day, it's no right or wrong, but it's not really showing the impact of pure digital offers, which means IoT, predictive maintenance, clarification, all these things that are pure digital. We have yet to see lots of numbers in sales and ROI. So, and it was the same discussion with GE. GE Digital, depending on how you counted it, went anywhere from 500 million in sales to 8 billion in sales. But at the end of the day, GE Digital is up for sale today, and it's probably going to be around 300 to 500 million in pure sales around Predix and some of these applications of Predix. So the reality is, most of what is done in digital is very hard to scale. These offers are pretty much stuck in pilot mode. And it's not just me saying it, it's McKinsey saying it. So if McKinsey says it, it must be right, right? They call this the pilot purgatory, right? So difficult in scaling, difficult in going viral, which, by the way, in B2C, they already cracked the nut. A lot of these offers are viral. All these Pandoras and Apple and all these companies doing subscription-based businesses, right, based on new offers, are going viral. It's not the case in industrial and B2B yet. So, you know, I like that phrase, Peter Drucker phrase, culture still eats breakfast, you know, strategy for breakfast. And we'll talk a lot about this because, you know, at the end of the day, there are some managerial consideration and cultural consideration that are right now blocking successful digital transformation. Nothing new. And it has happened for the last 100 years. And if you read about management, if you get it, you know, if you come here and do a class in management, you'll understand what's going on. So right now, I think there's a lot of changes happening. There was a pre-GE life and a post-GE life in the B2B and industrial world. Right now, some of these companies, the big companies like the Siemens, Caterpillar, and the likes, and even the Thales, are making strategic changes in how they do their digital transformation because of the lack of very high-level success stories. But yeah, everybody's interested in making you know, and being successful. So it's not a lack of trying, but I think you see some adaptation. It's you know, the test and learn approach we're launching the program and then we're adapting as we go, because frankly, this is a problem with digital transformation and B2B digital marketing is, you have to experiment. You know, you explore and then at some point you're going to exploit. Everybody's still in exploration mode today. So you see that big gap here. Something is not really not, you know, working as well as it is in B2C. So this is what's being written today. You know, Cisco announced 3/4 of IoT projects fail and 60% of IoT projects are stuck in proof of concept. McKinsey say, well, only 30% of IoT pilots scale, are successful. And by the way, now the forecasts are all being reduced by 50%. So you see all that buzz that we created for you know, the last 10 years. Yeah, you know, it's working to a certain extent, but I think we were a little bit irrational in the forecast and in, you know, how viral this is going to take. You know, it's going to be in B2B. It requires a different approach. B2C and B2B and B2G, business and government, are going to be different space, different speed, different commercial cycles, and different go-to-market. So by the way, if you want to ask any burning questions, you can feel free, and same online. If you want to ask a question, type that in the comment box, and I'll be happy to answer them. So let me show you the IoT dilemma. IoT is not an innovation. IoT has been around for 20 years. 20 years, I would say, in you know, the speed of change today is a long time. So IoT, we promised trillions of connected, you know, value. We promised billions of. Today, the market, according to Gartner, is 800 million. After 20 years. Now, I would not call that viral. I would look at the sales of Amazon, the sales of Uber, the sales of Apple and Google. This is viral in 5 years. This is not viral. Something is not working. You would agree? Maybe the numbers, you know, numbers are numbers. I'm making a claim and I'm sustaining my claim with some evidence, right, Robert? And that's fresh out of the Cisco studies. You know, these companies are doing a lot of research themselves, and so something is not working. So what's happening as far as digital transformation is concerned? You know, this is not new. You know, this is what I put. No, really? You know, the issue is not the technology. The issue is not, you know, we don't know what to do. The issue is we have a lot of cultural and organizational baggage. Industrial natives are still, you know, struggling with some of these managerial issues, cultural issues, you know, behavioral issues. So if you look at what needs to be done in digital, which is typically what the digital natives are pretty good at, right? The Amazon and the FANGs and GAFAMs, whatever, however you call them, you know, and that needs to be explorative, super fast, agile, with the willingness to take risks. You know, it's moving to services and software, you know, fast delivery, you name it, you know, test and learn, you know, all these lean canvas stuff, you know. This is what you read in B2C. Now, in industrial, now obviously you could argue B2B and industrial. B2B is a bit faster than pure industrial. Yeah, we're very hierarchical. We enormously product-centric still today. We love our products. We have a structure that sometimes is 100 years old, 50 years old, with silos and functional responsibilities, and the huge problems are inside. People fighting, not agreeing, And if you look at the GE stories, a lot of that is internal. A lot of that is conflicting sales territories, who's responsible, so we're going to do 3 types of the same platforms across 3 divisions. Nobody gets, in agreement with the doctrine. What's AI? No, I want to do my own things. Who's got money? All that stuff is typical. And this is what I keep, repeating. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. This has been around for 40 years now. I think it's in the 70s that was said. It's still the case today. Nothing new. The last time we did a massive innovation in industrial, that happened. It happened. So what should we expect with the disruptive change of digital, AI, and all these, great innovations? That will be different today. If we have these issues in organization, they're not going to be solved by themselves. I would say the next big one is this quote, structure follows strategy, not the other way around. You cannot do a digital strategy on a 100 years old legacy structure. Now you could be somewhat successful, but I'm going to give you 3 examples. Siemens just last year announced a major reorganization of their divisions because they understood that the traditional Siemens structure would not be favorable to deploying their digital strategy. So now they have a power division, a smart city division, and a digital factory, and other business units around regions. But they went from 6 to 3, right? Michelin Tire, the same. Michelin Tire went from a traditional organizational structure around OEM, around passenger tires, tractor tires, truck tires, to having business model units, connected tires, fleet management, right? Passenger cars. So changing, because they realized that if you do have these traditional divisions and you put digital under them, they're going to be eaten up by the culture. And it's even more difficult when you're successful. Your sales are going well, your profit is going well, and the top management and the culture say, I'm successful, I don't need that digital stuff because we're doing well. And you know what? Amazon will never come into my markets, right? A lot of people said that 5 years ago, and today Amazon is in space, is in the military, is everywhere, right? So something is going to happen. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, all the rest, right? They're moving into the traditional markets. So Boeing launched about 18 months ago a dedicated service division. Because as you know, digital is all about service business model, service delivery to the world. It's not about products, because most of the time the products will be given away for free and you're going to charge a subscription or pay per use. So at the end of the day, yes, you do need good products. You're going to have to make them connected. You're going to have to get the data, but you're going to get paid on subscription or something else. So, and they have very ambitious targets on services, from what they are today to $50 billion. Remember that Boeing is about 100 billion in sales. They broke the 100 billion barrier last year. Very ambitious. So you have now, you start seeing companies that are learning from the last 10 years and realizing that we cannot do our digital transformation without changing the structure. So we have a strategy and then we adapt the structure. So think about this now in all these giant industrial companies that are doing transformation and not changing the structure. So that's going to slow them down, because you spend a lot of time fighting and competing and negotiating internally before you go out to the customer and fight competition. Now remember, and you'll see that in my later section, digital is highly commoditized today. It's not like it's a huge innovation, shiny things where everybody is making tons of money. Because of these tsunami, lots of money has been poured in the innovation side, lots of competing companies out there, not interested in making a profit. So they learn from B2C. When B2C, you go in, you launch your offerings, you don't care about making profit, you're well-financed. What you want is users. You want to be first to market, not the famous first mover advantage, right? You go in and you establish your user base, right? Your asset base, and then you monetize it. Well, in B2B and industrial, it's already done. you have now 450 IoT platforms commercially available to the world. So if you launch yours, you're the 451st platform competing against the rest. So what makes you better than the others? Right? And you'll see a lot of my second section is about competitive advantage. So we do digital transformation, but we do not know our competitive advantage. We do not know what makes us unique and differentiated versus the rest of the world. And as a result, we do not know what value you bring to the market versus competition. Okay? So the typical issue we see in data-driven models, offers, or business models is all of this. I could have put another 10, but I know this is an eye chart. So first of all, it's rapidly commoditizing. There's lots of competition. Startups, the FANGs, the GAFAMs, all industrial players doing transformation. So everybody's offering IoT, everybody's offering predictive maintenance, everybody's moving to the cloud. The software industry moved from on-premise to SaaS. That's done. So now we're fighting. The opportunity to differentiate is small. In industrial business, not invented here is still a disease. And you still hear people telling you, maybe we should develop our own IoT platform. Okay, there's only 450 that you could choose from. Why would you go out and do your own? So a lot of the digital transformation and the need for speed, it's going to come from partnership. Partnership, business development, alliances, and this is very critical. Well, in some industrial sectors, we're not good at this. We're still learning how to do partnerships because we have these not invented here. We're successful, the almighty company, and we're going to dominate the world. And by the way, in industrial markets, distributors are also doing their digital transformation, and they want to eat our lunches. They want to go out and get the data and not let us have it, which makes it even more complicated because sometimes you have distributors that are very powerful, like the Graingers and the Fastenal and these big industrial players that are much faster than we are, agile, and have invested billions in technologies. And they haven't waited for us as manufacturers to go out and ask permission. They're already doing it. So as part of partnership is concerned, and we'll see, I'll use the word constellation. Value constellation is a big aspect of the monetization process. You have to look at your ecosystem and consider it not just an ecosystem, but a constellation, a value constellation. Because in digital, the value is migrating. There's massive power shifts in the value chain. Now, users have the data. And we got to go in maybe 3 levels down our offers to go to get the data. So the power is where the data is. So you really need to understand the value constellation and go find the data through partnerships and acquisition of data. Because right now, everybody knows data is, valuable and they're not going to give it away for free. So you got to negotiate. Adopting business as usual, go-to-market methods. This is what I've mentioned before. You cannot, so assuming you have marketing maturity in your company, which in industrial markets is, a big assumption. Assuming you're doing marketing very well, right? You could potentially copy and paste your marketing maturity onto digital, right? But that's not enough. Even if you have good marketing maturity, you need to do much more marketing based on customer intimacy in the digital world, right? So if you don't have marketing maturity in your core business, you're not going to have marketing maturity in your digital business. There's no miracle transition where magically maturity comes down and people are enlightened on how to do value and use analysis, customer journey mapping, customer insights research. Doesn't happen by, miracle coming down from the sky. So this is an area where I see a lot of issues where we're going to take sometimes our obsolete marketing processes and put them in our digital divisions or incubators or factories and assume that our product managers, our product owners, our architecture guys are going to do out of the blue, do fantastic marketing. As a result, a lot of what's being done in digital is me too. I'm going to copy what's already available and I'm going to launch it. Not knowing, is there a real customer problem? Did I do my lean canvas? Do I understand what the customer really wants? And not the typical, they're going to tell me what I need. doing customer observation, ethnographic research, day in the life of the customer, all these, customer insights methods. If you don't do that in your core, it's going to be very difficult to do that in your digital incubators. So the rest is pretty standard, understanding competition, pushing technology instead of driving technology based on customer needs. This is a typical lack of front end of innovation that we see in a lot of steel today, a lot of industrial companies, and it's happening in digital as well. At the bottom of this, you have two critical points here is, and that was very, very, for me, an eye-opening moment in my research when I interviewed over 30 of these digital players, the best of the best, supposedly, the big names of digital. And I was asking them at the end, the last question is, who's managing pricing for your digital offers? And the answer was typically engineers or, the product guys, right? And the second question was, but you do have a pricing team in your organization. You have, I know them because I'm a pricing guy. Yeah, they were not involved in the pricing decisions. So, and that was kind of, for me, eye-opening. Why is it that these companies, they have 200, 300 pricing guys with very, very, talented people in monetization and value-based pricing, and they're not brought in to the table in digital. So at the end of the day, if that happens, you have what you find in the book where I showed the GE Predicts pricing model, which is pretty much a very complex pricing model that an engineer designed. And I didn't understand it, and I'm a pricing guy, so I imagine the customers looking at this, at the end, what am I paying? Because it's not very clear. It's for, down payment plus monthly subscription plus annual subscription plus pay-per-use, and at the end, you really don't understand what you're paying, what your overall cost at the end for a customer is going to be when you join this platform. So you do need to look at pricing as an element of differentiation, but also an area of differentiation for your digital opportunities. And typically you have, a combination of subscription, pay-per-use, and if you really want to be good at pricing, you're going to move into outcome-based pricing, which is pay-per-performance, right? And that is starting now in healthcare. It's starting in the agribusiness, the smart farming. They're getting paid based on yield increase, based on, production numbers. But we're not there yet. In traditional markets, we're more on the, today is still product pricing. Okay, so I'm done with my section on transformation. Any burning questions that you have? So again, I don't want to be a buzzkiller, but I like to bring the reality to the world and say, we haven't cracked the nut yet. And frankly, there is more failure stories than high-level success stories. I don't know if you disagree, but I haven't seen yet a company that has exploded in the industrial world on B2B, AI, digital, IoT, because the market is still only at 800 million. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Since there is a things component to it, how do you the internet?
Well, yeah, so that's a good question. The definition of pure digital is I don't, for me, it's everything that is going to be outside of software sale, right, outside of product sale. And it would be, where you actually move into subscription modes or usage-based or outcome-based business models. And it's based on services. And you could put integrated solutions in there. But, you would have to go into type of application. So I would put in there all the IoT, the 4 segments of IoT, consumer, healthcare, infrastructure, and industrial IoT. So you have 4 markets. Predictive maintenance, a big market, all the HUMS, health and usage management services. And then some of these cloud, all these cloud efforts, moving things to the cloud, cloudification. But you would have to really go into understanding what pure digital. But pure digital for me is innovation, new business models, using digital as a backbone of the business model, which is going to be service and subscription, right? So software, for example, is an enabler of the pure digital innovation. The product is an enabler of it.
So, like an example, a smart fridge.
Yeah.
Just a fridge that's smart. Would it be pure digital?
Yeah.
But a smart fridge that helps you buy groceries
Correct. So you would look at the value created. There would be the subscription based on whatever content and media, and so it's not the fridge itself, right? But it will be the incremental revenue based on what you would not buy or recommended sales through the fridge, through the software, subscription around content, advertising, click of some sort. I'm going to book a restaurant from the fridge because I just thought about it. So all that stuff is the value would create. So remember, and we're going to talk about value. It's a good segue. You do three things in digital: you save money, you create money, you add revenue, or you create an experience which you can still monetize through branding or something like this. And this is the essence of value creation all the way to value capture. Now, typically in digital and in industrial, we focus a lot on saving money, efficiency reduction, yield improvement, and it's great. But a lot of the time, we forget about the ability to create additional revenue for either the end user or our partners, right? So if you do dynamic advertising based on your solution, if you can increase the rate of advertising or the frequency of the advertising, you're going to be paid on a portion of that. So you would tell the customer, I'm going to increase the average value of your advertising because it's very dynamic and it's personalized. You're going to pay me 10% of that increase. So we're going to do a sharing model, right? This is why you need to consider all these business model around and the pricing model that goes with the business model. Yeah.
Digital transformation, then, and is it best defined by example?
Well, the question is, how do you define digital transformation and what's a good example? So for me, I would tell you digital transformation doesn't exist. Business model transformation exists. The customer drives the transformation, but at the end, digital supports a business model transformation. So at the end, we go back to the strategy and innovation. Digital transformation was created because, now out of the blue, we have all these enormous market of providers, vendors, and all that stuff that is going into transforming businesses. But at the end of the day, it's a business model transformation. And that's something that people really don't understand in the industrial market is, yes, technology is there. You need to invest in technology, but it's all about the business model. And at the heart of this is value, the value prop. What are you doing? Right? So you listen to all the IoT experts. They'll tell you it's at the heart of your IoT strategy. It needs to be value. What is the value you're creating? And the value is I'm saving you money, I'm making you money, or I'm creating an experience, an emotional connection. And I've got to do it better than my competition because right now there's lots of competition. So this concept of competitive advantage from Michael Porter and now Rita McGrath. Yes, it still exists, but it's very transient. It's very dynamic because there is so much competition that in digital is so fast. You could have an offer today and 3 months from now, it's commoditized. Because everybody's investing billions in digital. So yes, it was created as a transformation, but I think for me it's just innovation. It's another innovation. The way e-commerce was an innovation, the way product development was an innovation at some point. The way marketing was created as an innovation. It's nothing new than an innovation. It's a powerful innovation.
Would it be fair to say then, like, where Lyft would be an example of digital transformation?
Yeah, because at the end, they were very disruptive in solving the customer problem, the same as Netflix. Well, if you look at Netflix and the pain that customer had with Blockbuster, right? These the pains were so bad, the late fees, and I have to go to the store. I don't have any video that there's not available. Then I have to buy popcorns at $20, and then they're not friendly, and it's snowing, all that stuff. Now you're at home, they're sending you DVDs. I'm like, geez, that's easy. So, and the same with Uber. You don't want to wait for the taxi. They're rude. They're gonna increase the price. They're gonna, right? So, at the heart, and if you look at the lean canvas process and Ash Mayura, it's all about identifying the customer problem, and from there the value prop, from there the business model, from there the willingness to pay, from there pricing power, and I'm selling something that the customer is willing to pay, whether it's digital or non-digital. So, for me, digital transformation doesn't exist. It's all about innovation and business transformation. Obviously, with a lot of technology behind it, because you have to have the engine, to deliver what you promise to the customer. So if you look at the 4 V's of big data, I will say it's all about value, right? Remember that quote, it's the value, stupid, right? And I'm adding one of the V's at the end, which is value. What is it that we're doing and how much value this is bringing to our ecosystem versus competition? You cannot think that there's no competition out there. And I'll tell you, if I had $100 every time I repeat this and people look at me, oh, really? Yeah, there's competition out there. If you're in an industrial company today, you're competing against other industrial natives, but you're also competing against BCG Digital, Deloitte Digital, Accenture Digital, and these companies are invoicing billions and billions of dollars in digital, right? And then all these startups that want to disrupt you. So if you think there is no competition today digital, you must have been living in a cave somewhere. Because frankly, it's very commoditized and very competitive. So the other thing that's typically an issue with industrial groups is their love with cost. You cannot do digital transformation and digital innovation and base that on cost for the reasons that are listed right here. Obsolescence is fast, everything is transparent, the buyers know what the cost of a sensor is, and the cost of the sensor, the price of a sensor, is now a fraction of what it used to be 5 years ago. So if you do cost plus in your pricing, it's easy to find what the cost of a cable, what the cost of sensor, a server, a switch is. So you can't do cost plus, otherwise your price goes down. You have a
So we have a question from the remote audience. Can you point to any good case studies on how legacy corporations partnered or acquired to develop and drive a new digital-based business model in the market successfully?
Yeah, so that is my number one issue. I look for these case studies and I found anecdotes. So if you go to all the champions in industrial champions right now, Caterpillar, Honeywell, Bosch, all these big companies that you know, the top 100 industrial groups, you go on their website, it's going to be full of digital stories and anecdotes, right? Case studies, customer stories, success stories, value stories. So I mean, I go on the Honeywell, the Rockwell site, UTC. These companies are doing digital transformations, Caterpillar, and they'll tell you, Schneider Electric, these companies will show you successful case studies. The problem is, remember, anecdote is not data. 3 customer success stories you cannot generalize to your entire customer base. So the problem is not having success stories, right? Successful pilots, because those exist. The problem is, how do I take that and I scale? How do I make it viral? That's what is right now the issue of GE and Caterpillar and Siemens, with MindSphere. The virality is not there. Like in B2C, B2C, it explodes if you have a good value prop, if you're very good at creating the experience and your user X, you'll explode, you'll go viral. In B2B, it's not the case. And most of the time, the issue is if you're selling predictive maintenance to a company that has multiple plants, multiple assets, you will have a lot of issues. First of all, different type of machines, different language in the machines. So, I mean, every customer is different. So I wish I had today a very large-scale success story in an industrial company, traditional, that has moved digital. If you find them, I would love to hear them study it. But right now, the jury is still out, right? And we haven't seen yet a phenomenal, and the only one was GE, frankly, until last year. So we're back to square zero and finding an explosive success story, like one of them that was, viral, either in predictive maintenance, IoT, and others.
So given that, do you think it's possible?
Yes, it's possible. But, remember what I said before, culture eats strategy for breakfast. It requires bold moves. It requires a different approach at the top. It requires really putting digital not as a division or as a shining little, project on the side. It's a deep, fundamental transformation of the business, which requires something different. Service orientation, agility, and addressing these internal barriers. And then obviously a very good go-to-market strategy. This is what I'm getting to now in my section. Assuming you got all that stuff done, you still have to do a great go-to-market strategy. which is not easy because of what I mentioned before. Every customer is different. And before you know it, instead of having one pilot or one proof of concept and go viral, you're going to have 200, 300 pilot projects, and they're all going to be stuck in pilot mode because, frankly, a pilot mode in AI or a pilot in IoT with an industrial account is going to last 18 months because no one is going to bring you in, right? Assuming you get selected, because right now a customer has 5 choices. They could go you, they could go Accenture, they could go your competitor, they could go startup, assuming they select you to do a pilot, right? You go in, you're going to do the development, you're going to, maybe equip an asset or plant with a sensor and do predictive maintenance. It's not going to go from there to, I'm going to put my 20 plants the next day. They're going to need to see the value. So you're going to equip the plant, you're going to put it in control like a Six Sigma project. You're going to calculate the value. And obviously in that time, you're going to do a lot of tweaking because you're discovering the customer process. And remember, in an asset, in a plant, there's a lot of moving parts. This is what SAP calls intelligent assets. If you only one portion of the asset, you don't control the whole chain. So you only bring the value to that specific part of the production process. What happened to the rest of the production process? What if there is a problem up front and the plant is down? Your numbers are not delivering. So this consideration is, the customer wants to see 12, 18 months of results, and then they'll tell you, okay, this is successful, assuming you are. And at that juncture, they could tell you, you know what, I don't like you, I'm going to use someone else. And this is what we see now after all this pain of pilot project. You get kicked out and someone else comes in because you've done all the groundwork, and the customer kicks you out and brings someone in who's more nimble, more agile, maybe more friendly, right? So there's a chance of being kicked out. And before they go from 1 plant to 20 plants around the world, they may scale 5 plants. Say, let's do now with 5 plants. This is not viral sales, right? This is not what typically industrial groups like to see as far as growth and innovation. And by the way, remember, we promised to the stock market lots of high-level numbers in the next 2-3 years. Well, guess what? If your pilot projects last 2 years, how are you going to deliver billions in innovation 2 years from now, 3 years from now? It's going to take 10 years. Assuming you get the budget, assuming there's no crisis, right? Assuming you're not changing CEOs, assuming. So this is a problem. So to go back to this, one of the essential component of a successful transformation in digital is moving to a value-based mindset because of this. If you do cost plus in a dematerialized world, you're going to have issues because the costs are going down, it's transparent, and there's so much competition that people now, today, companies and startups are giving everything away for free. So how do you compete against a startup that gives away equipment for free? Are you going to give the equipment for free? Have a question? Oh, okay. So this is Ash, the guru of Lean Canvas. And I like that quote. It's a summary of all my speech. An MVP is a smaller solution that delivers and captures back monetizable customer value. A lot of key words here. Monetizable. When you design your digital offer, your data-driven offer, you need to monetize from the get-go. If you can't monetize and it brings 0 value, you kill it. That's my view. I'm making a strong statement here. So in your portfolio of innovation, you need to kill very quickly things that are highly commoditized, bring 0 value, or you cannot monetize. Because we're not in the business of developing techno-push solutions that no one is going to pay for. Right? And then the customer value, in the meaning of customer value, there is also a meaning of competition. It's all about relative value. Remember, you never go to see, today everybody is aware of a digital transformation. Everybody has a procurement team and they find different sources of acquisition. They could procure from you, from consultants, from your competitors. So you're going to have to show that you have incremental value, right? So you're better than the other guys and you're going to make them more money, right, than the competition. So in the book, Monetizing Data, you'll see I list all the promised value for all these pure digital innovation. So you know that everybody knows that if you do IoT or if you do predictive maintenance, you should expect 25% reduction in operation cost. You should expect 40% reduction in maintenance cost. You should expect 10% increase in yield. That's a given. You know why? Because all the anecdotes, All the case studies that are published around the world in industrial markets all say the same thing. McKinsey also said the same thing, and BCG and the World Economic Forum. So these numbers have been anchored in our customer mind. So if I go see a customer and I say, work with us, we have a predictive maintenance solution that 90-day turnkey, right? The first reaction of a customer will be, yeah, but your competition also does that. We promise 90-day turnkey, and we also promise 20% reduction in operation cost. Why should I use you? So what makes you unique is that you got better AI, better algorithms, you got better data, you're better in delivery, you're a better scientist, you're faster, you're better, you look good. I mean, I don't know, but all these promises have already have been published. So it's no surprise, but very rarely you'll find a customer or end use account that knows nothing about digital. Everybody knows about digital. Everybody reads about digital. Yes.
So Aaron from our virtual audience asks if you can speak to how you might monetize, but at a higher cost initially, with the expectations that costs will go down.
Correct. So usually especially when we get into a very complex offers, like maybe a platform or an integrated solution, you know, I propose and I recommend to do a value roadmap. So you know that you're going to have a product roadmap, a technology roadmap over maybe the next 3 to 5 years. And the key is at the beginning, you know you're going to lose money. Your cost is going to be high. And you may have to have a freemium model at the beginning. So generally speaking, by the way, if you don't do pricing or if pricing is not involved, it's going to be either cost plus or free. Everybody's in love with freemium. And that comes from the B2C world, right? Yes, that works to a certain extent. Yes, I don't disagree that the freemium model is interesting at the beginning. But in the second horizon of your value roadmap, you need to start converting the free to pay, free to fee. And to do this, you cannot give the entire solution away at the beginning. You got to do a good, better, best approach in your roadmap, which requires segmentation. So you know your cost base is going to be high. You know you're going to sign a lot of users. That's a B2C model, lots of usage. You're going to show value stories. You're going to look at your business case with these first users. But you need to design this at the beginning for your third phase of your roadmap. This is where you make money. Now, the transition is difficult between phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. The more you go, the more it's going to require value-based pricing, because in phase 2, you're going to introduce premium offers or maybe features that will be monetizable, either pay for them or you're going to get paid on something. In 3, you reduce the freemium, move into more innovation, more willingness to pay, etc. But in your innovation roadmap, you got to structure that in a way that you make it very impossible to refuse for the customer to stay with you and also to start paying. And it was a big challenge in B2C with the Pandoras and iTunes and all these, freemium model to transfer that, to convert that to a paying model. And you assume your cost goes down as you go into greater usage. And technology costs go down, so your infrastructure costs go down. The only thing that goes up, and that's something that people don't realize, most people don't realize, is the more we go into data, the more we use data, the more expensive data becomes. At some point, 5 years ago, everybody had data, but didn't realize the value of data. Now, even us as personal end user, we know our data has value. We know it's being mined by Google, by Facebook, and in the future, we're going to want something for it. So if your offer requires external data, metadata, you got to put in your roadmap cost for acquiring the data. Data is not going to be free. And you have massive companies right now, data warehouse companies that are acquiring tons of data that will sell it to you. Frankly, it's a problem of Netflix. The content of Netflix was very inexpensive at the beginning, and you look at their cost now on acquiring content, it's explosive. It went from millions to multiple billions because everybody is realizing where the data is. This is why you do your value constellation. You need to understand where the data is and how much money you're going to have to pay to access the data. And that's going to be in your cost of future cost of your digital offer. And this is a design dilemma. At the beginning, you have to design in a way that you have a value roadmap and your cost roadmap, understanding that things are not going to be cheap. So data and digital is not business as usual. You need all these things. You need to do your value constellation. You need to redo your segmentation. You need to truly understand who your competitors are. The GAFAMs, the startups, your direct competitors in the industrial world. So I can tell you in Thales today, we compete against Siemens and Honeywell. They're all doing transformations. How is my digital factory better than the Siemens digital factory? How do I answer this? When the customer tells me, how's your IoT better than your IoT? What makes it better? This is a real question. And frankly, it's very difficult to understand true differentiators in digital because again, no one is publicizing their technology. And what is, Robert, what is what makes an AI better than another AI? Is it the algorithm? Is it the data? Is it, the scientist? Is it? So those are difficult answers, to find. And at some point, you got to dollarize it. If my IoT is better than the IoT from Honeywell, what does that mean in terms of financial value? How much more value do I bring to customers, to end users? So if Honeywell promises 18% reduction in operational efficiency, operation cost, or increase in operational efficiency, am I at 18%? Am I at 15%? Am I at 20%? You got to give an incentive now for people to consider you. And typically in my research, typically in talking to all my subjects, we're not doing that. It's not being done. So when we design the value proposition for digital, it's all in absolute. It's never relative to competition. Because it's very difficult to do competitive intelligence and differentiation analysis and dollarization analysis in digital. At the same time, we use very old-fashioned pricing models. And most of the time, because we don't know how to do subscription-based pricing, then we're going to fold the value of our data is folded in the price of the equipment. So here's my equipment. I put a premium in there, and the premium accounts for the software and the data, if you're lucky. Most of the time, it's unfortunate. You do a lot of innovation. You're going to promise a lot of things, and you bring value, and you give, if you do cost plus on your machines, you're not getting any value for your digital. This is where you give away your software for free and the data for free because you don't know how to do it. So there is an urgency to move to value-based pricing. And that's what the book is all about. And it's very hard. Frankly, this is the skills of the future because we're going into a more digital, dematerialized world, and we need to move everything from cost to value. That's a difficult transition. Okay? So here it is, do you think there is no competition in IoT? This is, the keyword here is leading, which means for each of the boxes, you have another 50 or 100, right? And remember, all that for a market of 800 million. So sometimes we get into discussions on differentiation and I'm facing 50 competitors. How do I know which one is against me when I visit an account? What question do I ask in front of a potential subject or in front of a customer that wants to do a pilot? Who are they talking to already? Who visited them? And how do I know if I have 3 players already, talking to the customer or the end user? How do I know I'm better? Well, you got to do some analysis. And frankly, industrial companies are good, are investing in technology. They'll pour billions of dollars in infrastructure. They'll make very expensive acquisitions. They will spend millions on pilots. And when we ask them to spend $100,000 on the competitive analysis, they will not spend it because there's no budget. Or when we ask them, can we do deep customer interview and really do a scaling plan based on customer insight? No budget. Or who's going to do it? Or we have to do that inside because it's proprietary. Well, who's going to do it? Because in our digital incubators, typically there is not that many very talented researchers. Customer research, market research, great technology people, not many customer-centric, customer-intimate, people. This is the rule that I mentioned before. I didn't mention it. It's a 90-10. 90% of the investments go to technology, 10%, if we're lucky, to marketing. My view is, in digital transformation, 50% should go to technology, 50% should go to marketing expenses. Marketing being business modeling, value prop, customer research, competitive analysis, differentiation analysis, pricing experimentation, A/B testing, conjoint analysis. All these research models that exist today are available in the pricing science toolkit, and it's not being used. So my best practices to go to market is only 5. The value constellation is number 1. If you today have an ecosystem map, typically companies will have an ecosystem map, who does what in the ecosystem. You need to move that to a value constellation. It may be multiple ecosystem, because at the end of the day, the data you need might be in another industry. So it's not available in your industry, you got to go get it. So if I'm offering, for example, screens for the plane entertainment system, right? And Thales is a big player in the IFE, the in-flight entertainment system. And I want to do dynamic advertising, and I want to do content optimization for passengers. Well, I'm going to have to go talk to Netflix, and I'm going to have usage, what are their preferences? Because now I'm moving away from selling to OEMs, Airbus and Boeing. I'm moving away from influencing the seat makers, people who actually put the screens in the seat, right? Who design the seat. I'm going far away. I'm going to talk to the passengers. And as an industrial native, I never talk to passengers. It's far away in the ecosystem. But now I got to understand how do they use media, what content they want, so I have to have access to data. So you really need to expand the constellation. So we're moving away from the traditional ecosystem and value chain to having more value constellations. Number 2 is digital is all about people. And no customer is going to give you access to their assets, to their plants, to the manufacturing site if they don't trust you. Why should they trust you? So we have a chapter in the book on trust and customer trust. You need to gain the customer trust. And that means a customer, assuming you go to a manufacturing operation where they're actually cutting they're cutting parts for automotive, right? And they're using machines, So you go talk to them about equipping the machines with sensors so they can, can optimize the performance of their assets, machine cutting, right? Well, the supervisors, the operators, they don't want to talk to a digital expert. They want to talk to someone who knows the machine, someone who knows metal cutting and has been in this segment for 30 years. They don't care about digital. If you go in there and talk about, oh yeah, AI, I'm going to put the sensor from XYZ, I'm going to connect it through the satellite. The operator is like, okay, dude, you're speaking a different language here. You're losing me. Tell me how I become more, professional with my cutting, and how do I make more money at the end of the day with my machine. So the trust is, and there's a great HBR piece on this. How do industrial natives compete with digital natives, and where is the differentiation? And really the differentiation is point number 2. The industrial natives have millions and hundreds of thousands of pieces of equipment in operation. They have deep customer knowledge in the application. This is something that the digital natives will never have. We have access to the plant. The customers know us because we've sold them something already, so they trust us. We have an established relationship, right? So the last thing we want, frankly, is out of the digital incubator, send all these millennials, wearing these T-shirts with a weed design and all that stuff, and nice design, going out and talk to these supervisors who've been in manufacturing for 40 years. And typically, no offense to all these young millennials and developers and UX experts, but they cannot speak the language of people in manufacturing. And that breaks the trust. You go in and pushing a solution, use my sensor, I want to do, optimize. Oh, by the way, you don't know how to use a machine, let me tell you how to use it. Never works. So there's a huge aspect of intimacy and trust, relational trust, that's big in digital, that's often omitted in discussions. We're just doing our stuff. We're going to see pilots. Typically, we select the wrong customer. We go in because we know the account, and we don't know if it's qualified or not. And we kind of push our technology there. Let's put some sensor. I want to do this. I want to do that. What's in it for me? I mean, we gotta really take a breather here and select the right customer and talk to the right people in the customer and build some trust before we go in and offer anything. And really truly understand their pains, their problems. So right now, because digital is going fast and we're all in a hurry to do something, then we're burning some bridges. So point number 2 is essential in the design of a good, incubator or digital factory. Obviously, we have to align from the business model all the way to the pricing model, and I'll show you more later. And then we got to find a quick exit from the pilot purgatory. Yeah.
We just would like a little clarification on the definition between ecosystem and constellation. Question coming in from the remote audience.
So as I said before, a constellation could be multiple ecosystems. So you have an ecosystem for media, you have an ecosystem for hardware, you may have an ecosystem, but you have to kind of put the whole constellation with relevant ecosystem to go find where the data is, and then understand who has the power. Now the power is with the owner of the data, the creator, generator of the data that you need to acquire to complete your data lake, in other words. So it's less of a traditional ecosystem where you plot 20 players in it. It's more an expanded, and you got to go far out of your ecosystem to find. So it's, a constellation has multiple, ecosystem. I would say that's an easy way to answer it. So point number 4 is where we are today. This is where the McKinsey and the BCG and all these consultants are now moving towards. How do we move from, having multiple pilots that take a long time to scaling fast and becoming viral? We haven't found a solution yet. I propose a couple solutions, but it's not an easy one because you can't force the customer to go fast. So it's all in the design of a portfolio of pilots with a common denominator. And at some point, picking the right end use. So one of the mistakes I would reading about GE and the issues with GE is they offered everything to everyone. They lacked the focus on some verticals, which means because all the end users were so different, they could not generalize the findings from the pilot. So you have to select the right verticals and you have to select the right end use, and think in terms of platforms. What is that can be platformized, I would say, turn into a platform, and what is modular on top of my offer. And that requires intentional design up front in your pilot strategy. Last but not least, you have to move to value-based pricing, and you have to adopt the latest, greatest B2C, subscription-based model, and usage-based model, and outcome-based model. And by the way, you need to have the technology to manage this. Because now, as an industrial player, you may be used to dealing with 50 customers, and now you may be dealing with 1 million end user. Imagine I'm selling hardware into a plane, 2 plane makers, 3, 4 maybe with the small ones. Now I want to sell a subscription to passengers, and I potentially could, I need to invoice 100 million passengers who are interested in my Wi-Fi or my offer. How do you go from 50 customers to 100 million? And that's a big problem in scaling. The ERP system, the CRM system. So one of the fastest growing company is called Zuora. Zuora, Z-U-A-R-A, it is a platform, an ERP that gets on top of your ERP and your CRM, and it's an engine, a subscription engine. You'll do auto management for your subscription, and you need some kind of an engine to do the invoicing. Otherwise, you have to hire 100 accountants and 100 people to collect the money. And in generally speaking, in industrial market, we're not equipped to go to a very large number of customers. And by the way, these customers are very fickle. They change their subscription every 3 days. And every change in subscription changes the revenue recognition. So you have new accounting rules that you have to pay attention to. That's only one of the aspects. I mean, I tell you, horror stories are coming out of my digital experience, including one company that took 1 year to create a bill of material in SAP because they were selling products and now they were supposed to sell a license, and the SAP was not equipped to invoice licenses, and the bill of materials literally take 1 year to build. So for 1 year, the salespeople were giving away the licenses for free. Once it's given for free, it's difficult to charge a premium later. So one finding for you that if you leave from here today and if you disconnect from Zoom, monetizing your data is 90% marketing, 10% technology. If you get the marketing right and you do the right work up front and you invest in the right testing and experimentation and design, the technology is going to be readily available to support and make you viral. It's not the other way around. And right now, it's the other way around. If you're lucky, you get 10% of your budgets going to go-to-market. Right? Some companies have understood that. They slowed down their transformation. You know, I encourage you to go check out the Stanley Black & Decker approach to digital. You know, they merge a few departments. They have now a VP of commercial and innovation management, including pricing, and they hire the best of the best researchers to study the customer problems, to study the customer before they do anything in digital. That you need money for this. The problem is our digital incubators, our digital factories, our digital teams do not have yet the budget to do a lot of work on customer research and competitive analysis and testing and validating business models. It's very ad hoc. So this is what the book is all about. 8 steps of, you see some of the things that I mentioned before. 8 steps is a lot, but it requires a lot of work. Some of that is already done, maybe in your approach. And towards the end of the process, you can't forget that digital is all about service. You know, you do not manage a business model, a digital business model, with a product organization. You need, so let's assuming now you're moving into a subscription to an IoT platform and you have sensors everywhere. You don't own the sensor. I mean, you own the sensor. The customer doesn't own the sensor, and you have to service them. When there's a break in the sensor somewhere on the train or in a control room, you have to go and fix it. So who's doing it? Service technicians. Well, in most industrial companies, we're not equipped in enough service technicians to go out and maintain the digital assets, which we own. So when we move into digital, we have to think about, how do I scale our service organization? This is what Boeing has, created, a massive service organization. Because at the end, now you could outsource that. Obviously, some companies have outsourced all the maintenance and the management of their assets to external people. But when you do this, you're giving away the data, you're giving away all the customer knowledge, right? Because remember that more data, more intimacy with digital means more innovation later, right? Because you're learning. If you manage the assets in the customer locations, you have the data, you have the customer performance data, you have their usage data, and then that gives you idea to do something else later. So I would not recommend to outsource it. Something else that's very critical and not often mentioned is legal contracts. You're moving away from selling a product on the CapEx model to having a relationship based on services, on subscription over a longer period, right? So you have different general sales conditions, you have different IP rules, you have data privacy and manage who owns the data, where does it belong, how do I manage it? And invoicing, you have different types of invoicing, different type of pricing conditions. And in some organizations, the legal teams are waking up. Oh, we're offering this. What do you mean you're offering this? You're having people sign these contracts, for this kind of offering? So recommendation, as you start your transformation at the very beginning, you need to engage very quickly your finance teams, because you're moving from a CapEx to an OpEx model, and there's a huge cash flow implication, and your legal teams. They need to be aware of what you're doing. Just on the data side, on the privacy, the GDPR, obviously most companies are looking at GDPR today, hopefully. If you don't do that, you're not going to scale. It's not going to be scalable, because you're going to run into internal roadblocks, legal issues, cash flow issues, and it's going to be very difficult to scale. So I'm not going to go through all of them. I encourage you to check out Future Publishing and the book, but it's, there's chapters for each step. At the end of the day, though, monetizing data is it starts with a good value creation model. What is it that you're doing for the customer in the value prop? How do you generate money for you and for the customer? And you pretty much are, 4 options, right? Either you do it for yourself to improve your internal process. So you're Caterpillar, you have all these data, and you're going to use the data internally to improve your internal process. The way you build your machine, your equipment, the way you manage them, the spare parts internally. Then you go externally. One model is, I'm selling all the data. I'm going to be paid on data. You're a data broker. Most companies don't want to do that, right? Number 2 is you're creating business models and service model around your existing products, right? So you have a product, and then you sell things around it. Subscription, maintenance subscription, education, learning, all that stuff. And number 4, brand new business model completely out of your product. Service models, right? So it's not 65 value creation models. Most consultants will promote 4, and there's the 4 I mentioned. Based on that, you have your business model, you have your proposition, then you go to the second one. Who does that already? How do I compete? What makes me better? And you're going to quantify that. And you're going to create what's called a value pool. This is what additional money I could share, with the customer. And obviously in digital, you're going to have to share a lot because you have to convince customers to go with you and not with competition. So in other words, how is my IoT better than someone else's IoT? And I'm going to incentivize to use me. And by the way, you're going to pay a little premium, but you're going to get much more value. Right? That's the essence of value-based pricing. And last step, value capture. How do I capture all that stuff? Is pricing. So I have to transition from a legacy pricing model to innovative pricing model, including in IT, ERP and pricing engines, deal management, collection, payment terms, as well as hybrid. So it's never legacy to subscription. And if you go, I invite you to go on the Zuora website, you'll see all kinds of different science around how do I mix subscription and usage-based. How do I combine usage-based pricing, pay-per-click, with a subscription with outcome-based pricing? So imagine what you need in the back office, because now in digital, you may have an upfront fee plus a subscription monthly, and then you could have a per click or per miles or per hour fee. So in Thales, for example, we're selling drone by the hour because we know that some government agencies do not have the money to buy drones, surveillance drones. So we'll go and say, you all turnkey drone by the hour. So we're invoicing per hour of flying, and we do all the back office, obviously. You need to be able to invoice that, right? Put in the ERP, get the finance on board, get the accountant on board to count the hours. How do you count the hours? Who counts the hour? So as far as transforming that in your contract, it's a huge consideration of how you're going to count based on whose numbers. So you need a software that counts. This is where Zuora come in. So obviously we're looking at Zuora today in our transformation. So these terms are important. Dollarization is comparing yourself to competition and how you're going to do better in terms of financial terms. Monetization is translating something into a revenue stream. Now you could do it based on cost plus. So we posit with Professor Ulaga, we need to do both. And we come up with that definition of data monetization. To monetize data is to convert an asset into a revenue stream or into profit by creating superior quantified financial value for customers versus competition. Right now, there's lots of competition in digital. I think I repeated that 5 times. If you don't believe me, look around, read around. It's phenomenal. Startups popping up right and left, everybody moving to digital, even internally in industrial companies, they're coming up with these startups that they're launching. In Thales, we're launching lots of different startups out of our MVPs. We're financing them. We have boards and they're competing sometimes against us internally. But we need to kind of free them to become the best of the best. So keep that in mind. We need to do monetization and we need to do dollarization. Both of them are needed. 2 different methods, 2 different approaches. And you do that upfront in the design of any digital offer, whether you're selling data, you're selling a B2C service, you need to monetize upfront. If you can't monetize and you bring 0 value versus competition, really ask yourself, do I do this? Do I invest in this offer? And that's a key finding for me is right now, we're claiming a lot of things in digital and the evidence is not there. We talked yesterday in class about the Toolman model, the creating arguments. Do we have the evidence and the grounds and the backing to make these claims? Today, we have a lot of anecdotes. But the plural of anecdote is not data. And that's the issue. 5 pilots doesn't mean that my entire market wants it. And right now, if you ask me what's the biggest issue in digital innovation is moving away from the pilot mode. I'm saying this, Cisco is saying this, McKinsey is saying this, and this is why you're going to see all these forecasts going down slowly. Now, they usually don't take them down, they just move the date. 50 billion by 2042. It used to be 2020, but now it's 2042. Don't believe all these numbers. At the end of the day, it's one customer at a time, and what is the value that I create versus competition? And if you don't have that answer, it's going to be either a Me Too cost plus or freemium, and you're going to burn resources, or I think you should kill the opportunity in your portfolio of innovation. So Another big issue is this. I publish these comics. If you join me on LinkedIn, you connect with me, you'll see every month I have a comic, and this one is about the typical 90-10. So we'll do all kinds of testing, you know, petabytes of data. We have hired hackers trying to get in, and we reward them if they do. We do all the apps. We have lots of developers, and then we'll talk to one customer. And then we'll launch. You think it's not the case? A lot of the time is we even don't talk to customers. We just launch. And that's, you know, I think for me, a mistake. This is where we need funding to do customer research, to do front end of innovation, to do customer ethnographic research, to really finding the real problem. And if you go on the YouTube and look at the videos from Ash Maurya, he's got a brand new video on how do you find the customer problem better than competition? Because you have to assume the competition is also looking at the customer problem. And this is why sometimes lean business models are not successful, because we do a plain vanilla business model. We don't really go to the heart of the hidden needs, the unsuspected needs. And you cannot do this by just asking questions. You have to do ethnographic research. We have to observe. We have to listen, use all those senses when you go into the customer location and look at areas of pains. Well, I remember the Henry Ford quote: if you ask people what they wanted, the faster horses, right? They wouldn't have told you a car. This is the exact same. You know, right now, if you go to see a customer, what do you need? They'll tell you, I need IoT. We're not going to tell you about the problem. So you really have to spend time testing and validating and get out of the building. That's it. This is the cover of the book. It's on Amazon if you're interested. Also in an ebook format. I took an hour and a half. Gee, I'm glad we had some questions. We have 5 minutes for more questions. I know it's a lot of information into an hour and a half, and I hope you learn something. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Anything online? Yeah.
So at the start,
Yeah.
In this bit. That way they can hear you in Arizona.
okay. So at the beginning, you talked a little bit about the difficulty of taking digital and scaling or making it viral.
Yeah.
And then in the middle, you talked a lot about how to do the business plan, transformation, and how to establish the right kind of relationship. So how, once that's gets going and we're building that and we monetize our data, does that lead to viralization or scaling, or saying that the viralization scaling that fast is a myth and we should focus on the business fundamentals?
Well, that is a strategy question. So how when you design your entire portfolio of innovation, you want to design for you want to look at what's you will have to have some Me Too's. I mean, at the end of the day, you will have to have an IoT offer because everybody else has it. You cannot be the only one not having it. And you understand that you're going to have to give price away for this, and you have to scale fast because you want to be in the space. So you're going to price accordingly and you're going to design accordingly. So maybe you won't invest billions, you'll go fast to market. And right now, Deloitte Digital offers turnkey IoT in 90 days. They'll come in and in 90 days, you're operational. Wow. So you're going to have to match that somehow, and maybe you'll become a bit more viral because you have an established customer base with an install base, okay? But the pricing may not be very good. In your portfolio, you may have level 2 innovation where it's a bit disruptive and you may bring some value, and there you'll decide maybe based on pricing and the value prop that you don't want to be that viral, and you're going to have a service type of business model. You may be viral in service, but because of the sales, you're not selling $10 million machine, you're selling subscription, $1,000 subscription. So it's a change of revenue model, assuming that it's going to be viral eventually. And then the last one is level 1 innovation, which is highly disruptive innovation. This is where, for me, there's no need to be viral. For me, I sense that if there is a high disruptive approach and if there is high willingness to pay, you should go with a premium model and focus on profitable growth and really introduce to the high pricing level, right? High touch, high solution, and then control who gets access to it, because this is where your sweet spot is. And so you may have different business model, different speed, different scaling. Now, your button here to modulate your virality is pricing. You may decide to go freemium and be very viral. And then in phase 2, you start converting 20% of your customer base into paying, right? Because you know that in that space, you need a lot of usage. That's a B2C model. I need 100,000 users, and eventually I convert 20,000 in paying. On the other side, on level 1, you may say, I'm only focused on these 20 customers. I want to convert 10. I'm going to go high price. And for this, I'm going to do upfront CapEx with an outcome-based pricing, which requires deep knowledge, deep collaboration. But you're going to make a lot of money, but you're not going to go viral, right? And the blend of this is you're going to at least break even. I mean, you know, at the beginning, you may lose money because you have high investment, R&D, depreciation. So there's EBITDA, there's EBIT. But all that stuff is a design, it's a design, you know, a dilemma, I would say, not dilemma, challenge at the beginning. And you have to have roadmap, and you have to understand what you're doing, and you really have to focus on the right verticals and the right opportunity. So one size fits all doesn't work. Going shotgun approach doesn't work, you know, and going in a hurry doesn't work. So I like to go viral, but I also like to make profit. I mean, this is what we're in business for. So there is growth, and there is profitable growth, and pricing is your speedometer. You know, it's like how do you go fast or viral or not? Is through pricing.
We have another question.
Hi.
So I want to see for the companies that they do have an internal value creation model in place. What are the common objectives and key results that they define through the process to track the success of the value creation model?
So this is essential. You know, I tell you, I won't mention names, but I used to consult for a company that they had a tough time using their solution internally, and their plants refused it. So how would you go to convince customer? The first question, if I were a customer and you would, you know, receive me to talk about this, my first question would be, have you used that internally in your plant? And obviously you want to say yes, and here is the result. And that's what Caterpillar has done. They've done for many years, they've done internally, or Scania, you know, Scania, the truck maker, they've equipped 250,000 trucks with sensors. Now they have data, and they can go to see the customer and say, we have the data, we can help you. The same with Caterpillar, we know the data. And so that creates trust because you've done several years of internal development before you go out and sell. And frankly, that's the first case study you're going to use is your own case study. I can show that in my plant, I save 15% of, you know, cost in maintenance. So you have to trust me because I'm going to save you even more because you're faster than we are, roughly. But that means internally, you have to convince internally your value creation model, and you know, you need to convince your manufacturing people, your quality people, your engineering people to do it with you. So you got to create internal pilots and fight the internal inertia and resistance. Without this, I don't think it's reasonable to think that I could go outside and convince anyone to do it if you haven't done it internally. That's a personal opinion. I mean, you could still convince someone, but an educated customer will ask you, have you done it and how much money did you save? And you better have a case study. So all that monetization approach, you have to do it internally with you. I'm going to take 5 plants, I'm going to put that in control, equip all my plants, and show that over 1 year I saved $1 million or $2 million. Then I go outside, find the pilots. And that's a way to accelerate your pilot, you know, strategy also. Does that answer your question?
So I just wanted to see, are there any common key results? Like, what are the metrics that you find
Yeah,
in
but
the process? Is it the dollar? Is it
yeah,
operational efficiency? Like, what are the metrics they
yeah.
find in the process, and they just you know, take that as you said, case studies that
Yeah. So the question is, what is the matrix? What are the metrics and the KPI? And that's a good question. In some of the most common digital offers, those are published already. And in the book, I have a chapter on what the KPIs are. Others, if it's brand, you know, if it's level 1 innovation, you're going to have to define the matrix, and that is going to be done internally. The test, the measurement test, the language, all that stuff, the telemetrics, all that stuff, you'll have to design it, and then you can actually include that in your outside external offer. So that's the most complicated one because you have to design test methods. You have to make sure you have the right language. You collect the language, you translate the language, and you turn that into KPIs with dashboards and all that stuff. That's a little bit of work. If you do IoT internally or predictive maintenance, you know, the 10 KPIs of predictive maintenance have been well published before, and the savings have been well established, and even calculation methods. If it's brand new, typically what you would do, and that's what smart farming have done, is they've gone out and they've invested with academia, with universities on pilot studies, academic studies in the field with, School of Farming and agricultural department of, and they did a lot of academic studies. And then they published academic reports, and that turned into models, simulators to use internally, and then went outside. So, so I would say some of them are already available. Others you may have to invest with your engineering teams and quality teams on how do I measure the impact. And you'll see this is important because if you do outcome-based pricing, performance-based pricing, you're going to have to define the KPIs for the customers, and you're going to have to agree on how you measure it. And by the way, you're going to have to go back 2 years with the customer and recreate the environment to show that very savings. Huge, huge complication. So, and the contracts might be 2 meters high or 1 meter high on when you get into performance-based pricing contracts. So anyway, that's. Thank you. I think it's done for today. I thank you for being here online and in the room. I invite you to ask questions off-site, and we'll see you on the, connect with me on LinkedIn, and see you soon.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your morning to
If you
be
want
with
the
us
slides,
live here via Zoom. Have a great day.
You can have the slides if you want in PDF.